Okay, before we get started, I would like to remind the crowd and those sitting here to please remain quiet during the rest of this proceeding. The court reporter up here has to hear everything that we say, and we don't need any distractions or any noise, so I would very much appreciate it if you could continue to be in silence during the remaining of this process. The board has now returned to the due process hearing for Dr. Marsha Gore regarding her proposed dismissal. Item J, vote to acknowledge return to open session.
I'll make a motion, we return to open session.
Second.
The motion has been made by Dr. Wanzik and seconded by Mr. Turner for the board to return to open session. The time is now 6 p.m. Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Mrs. Jacobo?
Yes.
Dr. Wanzik? Yes. Mrs. Nelson? Yes, motion passes. Statement of executive session minute, if any. The board went into executive session at 10:04 a.m. to deliberate on the dismissal or not of Dr. Gore from her employment with McAllister Public Schools pursuant to Oklahoma Statute Title 25, Section 307B1 and 7. No other matters were discussed, no votes taken. Those present were Angie Nelson, David Turner, Janet Wanzik, Stephanie Giacomo, and Mr. John Moyer. This concludes the minutes of the executive session. Item L, discussion and vote to adopt findings of fact.
I'd like to make a motion, having heard the testimony and evidence presented during Dr. Gore's hearing and having deliberated on the evidence in executive session for approximately 8 hours, I move that the board adopt the following findings of fact. That the district failed to define or provide sufficient evidence that Dr. Gore traveled extensively at the expense of the public on district-related business. That the district failed to provide evidence or testimony to show that Dr. Gore approved Mr. Joseph Gore's travel. The district failed to show any documentation or provide testimony related to purchase of a $2,000 treadmill for office staff's exercise. That Dr. Gore directed or allowed the deposit to the calendar account of substantial revenues that were not authorized to be deposited to such account, including the proceeds from the sale of scrap and surplus property. That Dr. Gore directed or personally made purchases from funds of the calendar account, either for her personal use or for the purpose other than that for which the account was originally created, and in a manner contrary to law. Dr. Gore violated Board of Education Policy CHD-R credit card by permitting the issuance of multiple business credit cards to district personnel, which resulted in spending not provided for by policy and not controlled by the superintendent. That Dr. Gore used her school business credit card for personal use or for matters unrelated to school business and failed to maintain records or logs of credit card use in violation of the credit card policy. That after Mr. Grillo had been removed as treasurer by the Board of Education on September 4th, 2015, and after open records requests were made, Dr. Gore wrote several personal checks payable to McAllister Public Schools to reimburse the district for personal expenses previously paid by the district from the activity or general fund. These checks were written by Dr. Gore in late September. Dr. Gore dated these checks as being written in August. This was an effort to cover up the fact that district had paid Dr. Gore's personal expenses. Shannon Sherman Schwartz met with and advised a sitting member of the Board of Education and advised her of her grievances against Dr. Gore in the fall of 2013. Since that time, the Board of Education has evaluated and extended Dr. Gore's contract. In an incident involving Assistant Principal Dwayne Hampton, Dr. Gore acted in an unprofessional manner on or about January 16, 2015, by openly chastising him in front of other employees and students during the lunch period at Peterbaum Middle School. that Dr. Gore acted in an unprofessional manner by her behavior in dealing with district personnel, namely Adam Newman, Creela Porter Harmon, Angie Holloman, Cassie Grillo, Brent Grillo, and Shannon Sherman Schwartz. Her treatment of them involving their job performance, promised promotion or pay increases, and their status of employment was unfair, uneven and arbitrary, or showed favoritism, intimidation, or threats. That on numerous occasions, the activity fund custodian and encumbrance clerk were instructed by Dr. Gore not to ask any questions at training sessions, not to contact Nancy Hughes, the district's former treasurer, and any auditor or school board member. That Marsha Gore violated provisions of her employment, which are specified in her employment contract and in board policies BJ and BJA. Dr. Gore purposely concealed vital information from the Board of Education by not disclosing or identifying items of material concern of the district, including a budget shortfall, personal purchase reimbursements from activity and encumbrance funds, and her concerns in the fall of 2013 concerning the competency and performance of the business manager. The actions of Dr. Gore are set out above, are found to have seriously damaged the interest, trust, and support of the employees and community members. A preponderance of the evidence supports these findings of facts at reasons A, B, and D, as stated in the notice of possible dismissal. Those reasons are that violations of approved Board of Education policies pertaining to travel, use of activity funds, and use of credit cards occurred. That Dr. Gore was unprofessional in her conduct and the treatment of certified staff, and dismissal is in the best interest of the district. Each of the reasons for dismissal standing alone is sufficient to support Dr. Marsha Gore's dismissal from her employment with the McAllister Public Schools.
I'll second the findings of fact.
The motion has been made by Ms. Stephanie Giacomo to accept the findings of fact as she read aloud, and seconded by Dr. Wanzik. Will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Mrs. Giacomo?
Yes.
Dr. Watson?
Yes.
Mrs. Nelson?
Yes, motion passes. Item M is discussion and vote to dismiss or not dismiss Dr. Gore from her employment with the McAllister Public Schools.
I make a motion that we dismiss Dr. Gore from her employment with the McAllister Public Schools immediately.
Second.
The motion has been made by Mrs. Giacomo and seconded by Mr. Turner to dismiss the employment of Dr. Gore effective immediately from her employment with the McAllister Public Schools. Will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Mrs. Giacomo?
Yes.
Dr. Watson?
Yes.
Mrs. Nelson?
Yes, motion passes. Item 3 is adjournment.
I'll make a motion we adjourn.
I'll second.
The motion has been made by Dr. Wanzik and seconded by Mrs. Giacomo to adjourn the meeting. Will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Mrs. Giacomo?
Yes.
Dr. Watson?
Yes.
Mrs. Nelson?
Yes, motion passes. The time is 6:08. Our meeting is adjourned.